Hi, my name is Jennifer Santos with the Center for Industry Self-Regulation and the lead on our newest initiative, the Institute for Responsible Influence, a U.S.-based creator training and certification program. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with advertising leaders from around the world, convened by our partners at ICAS, to discuss the global movement to increase trust in influencer marketing. Influencer marketing has become a truly global practice. And as the creator economy grows, so does the responsibility to ensure that advertising remains transparent, ethical, and understandable to audiences everywhere. One of the most important tools we have to ensure this is education. And no one knows that better than my guests, who have been leading successful creator training and certification initiatives in their countries, improving compliance with advertising laws across the creator economy and building trust with consumers. All right, let's meet our guests. So if we would all go around the room and introduce ourselves. Sybil, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. Hi, my name is Sybil Stanch. I'm the director of ICAS, the International Council for Ad Self-Regulation. And we are a global network of ad standards bodies, or so-called self-regulatory organizations, in short SROs, and the global advertising industry.
Great. And Otto, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, I'm Otto van der Harst. I'm the director of the SRC, the Stichting Reclame Code. That's Dutch. And we're based in Amsterdam and busy with the Netherlands, where we also have a lot of influencers and a lot of trust problems with influencers. So we devised some programs to work on that. And I'm happy to explore that together with you guys.
Wonderful. And Mohammed, you could go next.
Hi everyone, I'm Mohamed Mansouri, Deputy Director of the ARPP, Autorité de Régulation Professionnelle de la Publicité, which is the French self-regulatory body in France. And we've been working on influence marketing for now near 10 years. We've launched a certificate, the observatory based on AI, and I'm very happy to share with you our findings and learnings and moving forward with you.
Wonderful. And Manisha?
Hi, everyone. I'm Manisha Kapoor, and I head the Advertising Standards Council of India. We are based in Mumbai, India.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. I'm very much looking forward to your perspectives on what effective influencer education looks like in your corner of the globe, and really how global cooperation can help shape the future of the creator economy. So let's start with speaking about ICAS and their role in influencer education. So ICAS sits in some ways at the center of this global movement towards responsible influencer marketing. Sybil, what trends are you seeing internationally? And how many countries are actively engaged in developing training or monitoring schemes?
Thank you so much for the question. So when we look at the trends, I would say that influencer marketing has been around for a while now, but it's definitely across the globe that it's really growing. So influencer marketing is growing quite fast. In the US, we have actually seen that influencer marketing is growing 4 times faster than the other media industry. And this is across the globe. This year alone, I think the whole creator economy was valued at $250 billion. And this will be just growing and growing. And with this growth in scale, there comes also a need for more responsibility. Across the network, we see that many of our self-regulatory bodies have rules in place, and that since quite a long time. So I would say all of them cover influencer marketing, and most of them have specific rules for influencer marketing. And they also started to train influencers and also the sector, the brands. And increasingly, we also really see the certification schemes. And this comes because we have really very active self-regulatory bodies, such as the ones that are here today in this virtual room.
Excellent. Now, to each of the individual self-regulatory leaders, from your vantage point, what is the core challenge we're all trying to address in the creator economy? We talk about it in a very broad way, but I'd love to hear from your perspective. Is it consumer protection? Is it industry responsibility? or is it really more to do with regulatory rules that you are trying to address or ensure that creators and influencers are following? Otto, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key point here is trust. And do we trust the ecosystem of influencers as being a growing medium throughout the marketing world and the whole marketing ecosystem? Influencers become very important. They sell their authenticity and their intimacy with customers that work very well to promote products and services. And they have a big role to play there. So, big multinational companies really believe in the fact that this is now part of their marketing mix and it will grow rather than decline. So we have to have an answer to what this ecosystem actually is and how we can foster trust in that ecosystem. And it's an incredibly large community, and every day new influencers and creators start up their business. Sometimes even don't know how to pay tax, but they start their own thing with their phone, and they're in business. I mean, it's a very democratic form of media, and that democratic form needs some guardrails, some sense of, this is how we go about things, and that has been going from the anarchy that it was in the beginning. We're now at a stage where we are trying to learn people how to behave. And I think the advertising community plays a big role in bringing about that common sense of how do you go about things. So where SROs come in is that they define codes together with industry, and they of course get the feedback from the crowd, from the influencers on whether that works or not. And we started our first influencer marketing code in 2014. So that's more than 10 years ago. I believe in France it was even earlier. And some other European markets, we've been really working on this for quite a while. There's a lot of mythical talk about what's wrong with the internet and what's wrong with influencers and how they poison our youngsters, basically. And that's all fact-free debate. It's really a debate on terms of emotions rather than on facts. So what we were looking for was essentially in the advertising ecosphere to find ways to get behind numbers, to monitor, to really size upon the amount of work that's been done by influencers, and find tools and define tools to get a grip. And getting a grip is what we've been doing. And I'm glad to say that in Europe we've united our forces with the French, with the English, with other countries in getting our heads around how to do this.
Excellent. And Mohammed, I'll turn to you. From your vantage point, you were really, France was one of the first advertising self-regulatory bodies to really tackle this challenge. So from your vantage point, what's the core challenge that you were trying to address in the creator economy?
I completely agree with what Otto just said. It's all about trust. If there is no trust, there is no business. So so when we started to adopt, we adopted more than 10 years ago this code. We wanted to be sure that this disclosure rule, but all the rules that the legal framework and ethical framework of the advertising was respected in influence marketing. We've launched this observatory, and we had seen at this time in 2019, 6 years ago, that there was a real education issue, real education challenge, and particularly for small influencers at this time, not because they didn't want to respect the rule, because they didn't know the rule. So the industry, this is the steering committee of this observatory, decided to launch a certificate 4 years ago, a general certificate in which influencers, content creators can learn all the framework about general rules and sectoral rules. And it worked well because when we monitor year by year, year after year, the compliance rate, we noticed that there was an improvement. And the improvement was better with the certified influencers. what is really interesting today is that this creator economy at the national level, the advertiser invest, it has grown very fastly. In 2023, there was about 320 million euros. For 1 year after 224, it was about 460 million. And in 2024, in 25, sorry, and 224, sorry, it was 519 euros, 500 million and 19. So it grows very fastly, quicker than other medias. So it's a growing sector that needs to be professionalized, and to help it to be professionalized, we need to bring education. And what we've noticed also is that this creator economy is organizing around topics and sectors. We have less and less influencers that do a cosmetic partnership or travel partnership, or specialize on beauty, lifestyle, and so on. They are more and more specialized. And what we want to do today is to specialize also the certificate and the education around specific topics. And that's why we started to create several certificates to bring a relevant answer to this organization of the creator economy.
Thank you, Mohammed. And Manisha, from your vantage point at ASCI, what's the core challenge that you're trying to address in the creator economy? Are there cultural or structural factors that affect this core challenge? I'd love to hear about that from you.
Yeah, thanks, for the question. I think we have, ICAS and our partners here a lot to thank, for, because I think it was the pandemic that really accelerated influencer visibility and marketing in India. I think some of the particular challenges that we face, structurally, as you said, is that many of the internet first brands, which are largely, small or medium enterprises and extremely fragmented, use influencers who are also extremely fragmented, to deliver their brand messages. And many of them are, in the sense, out of any kind of formal industry associations or formal organizations. And therefore, many of them are also outside the formal SRO systems. And for us, I think that's a really uphill task. We have also influencers who are, producing content in multiple languages across the country. We have many local and regional brands that are using them. So for us, I think those have been some of the initial challenges. I think some of the newer things that we are seeing emerging, I think, Mohammed referred to it as well, in terms of, it's not just the disclosure, but also what is being said. And we see, particularly in the case of health and finance, as two categories which are, where the vulnerability of consumers are quite high. And therefore, we've had to kind of bring in a few specific guidelines, for these categories. But yes, I think going forward, things will keep getting more specialized and even more fragmented, perhaps for a while, before they start to consolidate in some way. So I think we have an interesting few years in front of us, which are definitely going to be quite challenging for us as regulators and as self-regulators.
Yes, Manisha, I think we all agree with that. So you make a great segue or into talking about each country's model. So could you talk a little bit about your country's model of influencer education? What programs do you offer? Is there testing? And we would love to talk a little bit about your approach in designing your training and certification, and if you do any monitoring. And it sounds like you're tweaking that. So we'd love to hear a little bit about those tweaks as well.
Yeah, so I think, as we've discussed, I think, with the market being so fragmented, that's a real challenge for us. We have started to build, the certification programs to begin with. I think we will go down the more specialization route as these programs mature. And I also mentioned that we've started to work with corporates. We find that possibly maybe a new segue and a way for us to work. So we will go to a company and say, hey, you're kind of embarking on this really large campaign. Do you know whether all the influencers you are using are going to be, careful about the way they talk about your brand, etc. And we've had some traction, with that, where brands now call us to present to, their influencer cohort that they, plan to use for certain campaigns. I think partnerships, collaborations, and I think particularly also with the platforms. How do we kind of work with the Amazons and the Googles and the Metas of the world to help us really scale this program, and also to kind of make this, a kind of part of the ecosystem, a part of how influencers eventually will, start to talk about or get trained. I think, again, someone mentioned earlier the need to professionalize influencers, and also how they see it themselves as a career and not just a gig.
Mohammed, back to you. Could you tell us a little bit about your country's model? What approach did you take when you were designing it? And have you tweaked it at all as time has gone on and you've seen the reaction from influencers and creators that are taking the program?
So now we consider the creators as a real stakeholder now of our ecosystem. We have the advertisers, the agencies, the media, the platforms, and the creators. And creators are now entrepreneurs. They are also sometimes medias. And so we consider them as a real stakeholder. And to get them to onboard them, so we have created this certification. The very first version was a half-day online course with general rules and sectoral rules. And the way that we onboard them is, once they are certified, they benefit some services from us. The first one is a club that we gather every quarter about specific topics: children protection, how can you protect your image or your content, and how can you fight against deepfakes, for example, if you need to protect your own persona, about sustainable tourism, about health, and so on. And we ask some external third parties experts to come and to bring their vision and to answer to their questions. So we're trying to animate a community of certified creators and keep the link with them. We also launched a WhatsApp service. They can ask to our legal counsels all their questions about the legal framework and ethical framework. So we keep this advice link with them about the legal framework. And we have also other events where we invite them so that they can also get in touch with the brands and so on. So for us, it's really important to consider them as such, as a real stakeholder. And that's why today we are trying to enhance the specialization, as I said, around specific topics. And because you cannot talk about the same manner with a influencer or a beauty influencer, are completely different. They are not concerned by the same issues and so on. So you need to adapt your education offer to them. So that's why we specialize on these education tools. And I think this is the main way of our model, on the education part.
Excellent. Now I'll turn to you, Otto. What about when you were developing? Can you tell us about when you were developing your training and certification program? How did you develop it? Why did you take that approach? And have you noticed, any tweaks that you need to make or will consider making in the future?
Yes, good question. I mean, we've of course learned a bit from what France was already doing, and of course looked very carefully in how we should be handling this very heterogeneous group. I mean, there's not one kind of influencer. I mean, there's tons of them. So the first principle was to basically say, there's no union, there's no collective that we could talk to. So we have to find these people and get them around the table and talk about the issues at stake. That was the first. The second was they all want to do business. So they all want to work with big brands and good brand names. And we found out that as soon as we involve the brands, then the conversation will get more serious, and they will live up to the idea. Well, oh, wait a minute, this might be business. So we involved that early. We also got the endorsement of brands that they would only work with certified influencers if we would do a good certification process. I think that's very important. The big insight that we got was basically defining one website where every influencer rule was to be found. So rules about influencing, learnings about influencing, insights about how to set up things, all bring it together on one website called influencerregels.com. And that site really took off. It was an industry initiative by the Digital Driven Marketing Association, and they made a big success out of it. So that's also the place where we reside the e-learning and where this whole certificate thing can be found. And when it comes to the actual e-learning, we found out that influencers want to learn from influencers. They don't want to hear a boomer tell them what to do. So I was basically cut out of a job. I thought I would be going to be the professor, but I wasn't. So we got all these influencers to talk about topics in their own language, talk about it in the way they thought fit, and then ask them questions about what you should do on a specific platform. There's different rules of engagement. There's different ways of going about things, but they were explaining it to each other, which I think was a very broad idea, but it worked out very well. Another thing that we did right from the start was we got the regulator, the Media Commission in the Netherlands, to also take part of that whole education for itself. So they have a little chapter where they can say basically these are the laws that you have to abide with. So there was space for that as well. And therefore, it kind of get the feeling that this was a broad union of stakeholders taking care of this course. Now, as Mohammed said, since it's beauty versus cars versus money in crypto, these people are not having the same interests. They look at different things. So yes, we're also talking about having separate e-learnings for separate target groups. Also having an e-learning for agencies and agents, which is a different community as well, but also a very strong community, force rules upon people. And even advertisers, big brands want to show that they live by the rules and therefore get a certificate.
Let's talk a little bit about hurdles. Clearly, these robust programs that each of you and your organizations have built surely encountered some hurdles along the way. So what would you each say was your biggest hurdle?
So I think, how do you kind of build that first cohort that comes in and then is able to, I think, really, snowball the program for you?
I think that monitoring is a real challenge. We have more and more content creators certified to 2,300 or so. And so thanks to, and with Otto and our UK colleagues, we are talking about how we can use AI to enhance the monitoring. But it's a real challenge, real technical challenge to get the real the alert. More and more small influencers. We're happy to see that UGC, user-generated content, and small influencers are more compliant than they used to be. But now we're facing another challenge: is all these UGC are generated by AI in a massive way, and they promote products that by definition they have not tried, or because they are not existing. So we need more transparency, more disclosure, labelization of this AI content, and for that it becomes hard and hard to detect whether it's AI or not.
Makes sense. And what about you, Otto?
Yeah, I think one of the big insight is that you need big companies and big brands to endorse your program. If you don't have those, it's very hard to move forward, and that's what we are very much aware of when we started off. So we knew we needed 7 or 8 brands to really make this work before we would actually announce the whole scheme. So that's a big hurdle because, of course, there's companies that use tons of influencers on a completely different basis. They don't have a formal contract. They just send out free samples of a new toothpaste, and they just hope that from the 300 they send out 10 or 20 might actually post something. So there is a relevant relationship there, but there's no money flowing. There's no formal contract. There's nobody's taking care of the real content made. So you really need to be aware of the different marketing techniques behind it. As soon as there's a formal contract, then an influencer probably will behave because then there's a relationship and you know that they are professional. I think that's one of the bigger challenges. And when you look at the actual making of the videos that went into the course, the online course, we found that if you do funny stuff with young influencers that do very pop culture kind of things, that again is misunderstood by the financial influencers of 40 plus.
Do any of you find that there's particular industries that tend to adopt creator or influencer training more than others?
I think, if I talk for my thing, I think cosmetics and travel are the 2 industries that are the most important users of influencers and creators. So they're the most sophisticated because they've been going through cycles and they've seen more things happening. Foods, drinks, that's also a big industry there that has a lot of experience. And there's industries that still are, basically beginning to understand what the power of influencers can mean for them.
I would say we are still probably at a little bit of a nascent stage, but we have seen again the more traditional sectors like cosmetics and skincare and food, etc., be more open. However, I would say the real challenges are with some of the newer sectors like gaming, where we just see so much influencer activity, but perhaps not enough uptake of programs like this. And in general, again, I think just to get them interested in these aspects.
Yes, same in France here with the beauty and cosmetics. The fact that L'Oréal France is the first advertiser that have made it mandatory, and is one of the it is the biggest here. So naturally, the certification raised up and accelerated thanks to this advertiser. We also have a partnership with local authorities. We have a partnership with the gambling authority that have made it mandatory for all the actors, all the advertisers that want to activate influence marketing. So for them, it's mandatory. L'Autorité Nationale des Jeux, which means the Gambling National Authority, asked all the advertiser of gambling to work only with certified influencers. We also have another local partnership with the Financial Market Authority, and we both of them, with the Gambling Authority and the Financial Authority, we built two specific certificate with options. And as Otto said, also food, because we have since L'Oréal, we had other advertisers that have made it mandatory, like Fromage Belle, with a major food advertiser. Traveling also with Club Med and other advertisers. But these are the main sectors that are concerned by the certification.
Excellent. Now let's talk about success. How have each of your programs gone about assessing whether your training and certification and monitoring efforts are actually shifting behavior? So Otto, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky to have a monitoring tool in place when we started the certification process. So we have actually measured about 1,000 influencers before we started certification, and we measured them a year later, and we found a big uptake on disclosure properly. So the disclosure discussion was big. Only about 30%, as Mohammed said, is the same for France, I think. 25 to 30% did it right, and the rest did it wrong. And now we are up to 64%. So France is way ahead of us, but we're doing a lot better. And there's nothing else has changed. So we kind of feel that this is because of our program. It's powerful to monitor. It's powerful that you can say you're actually looking at the people that are certified.
Mhm.
The brands love it. And it's also a story that tells, it's very nice to present that, of course. I mean, it's a nice measure, and it's also saying, here we have a community that we actually monitor. So we're talking fact-based and not myth-based. And brands love that. They do that. And they join us. So.
Now, Manisha, let's move over to you. Do you have a way that you measure success? And if so, what does that look like at ASCI?
We did a very interesting dipstick with some really large influencers who hadn't done our course, and we found about 73-74% of them, were violating even disclosure guidelines. And these were really big names. So I think what we were able to do was to also put out some of this information into the public domain, and then it kind of gets talked about, and it creates that momentum. And when we did a similar dipstick amongst the people who had done our program, it was about 75 to 80% compliance. So it was kind of the reverse, numbers. But we haven't done it as consistently as we need to do. And I think that's just a question of, what other priorities we have at this point of time. But yes, this is an important aspect. As we grow the program, this certainly becomes the evidence, that will kind of make the program bigger.
Yes. Folks always want to see evidence of whether or not what they are investing in is actually, showing some sort of success. So, and Mohammed, what about in France? How do you assess whether your training is working?
So the first KPI is the compliance rate that we're measuring with the observatory. So as Otto said, in 2020, a quarter of the content that was analyzed at this time were absolutely not disclosing their partnership. Now they are less than 10%. And the content that were completely compliant were only 32% in 2020. So it's increasing well. And we also compare the compliance rate between certified influencers and non-certified, and certified influencers they commit 3 times less breaches than certified influencers. So there is a real difference, and the public power, the authorities are happy with that, of course, because there is a real impact. Another KPI is, of course, the number of certified profiles, 2,300, and fact that in France, there are 15,000 content creators that live with this activity. And also, we have a national survey every year that we conduct with an institute about, I talked about the investment, the budgets of the advertisers, and also ask them if they know the certificate and what they think about the certificate. And for all the advertisers that know the certificate, 75% says that it is important or very important. The certification is important or very important. 75% of all the advertisers at the national level that know the certificate, which is an interesting KPI.
That's great. Yeah, because I think oftentimes when we work in this world, we all know of the different certificates, but interesting to see on a broader basis what, whether the certificate is understood or known. So that's wonderful that you've accomplished, that the certificate is well known. Let's talk a little bit, I think, get a broader lens and talk a little bit about the creator economy and the trends that are going on within it. So as the creator economy grows, how are brands approaching disclosure and ethical marketing? Are you finding that brands are understanding the importance of it? Or are you finding you still need to explain, why it's important? Are they developing their own guidelines, or are they relying more on programs like this?
Yeah, so we are definitely seeing, brands. I would say some of the bigger brands to pushing the agenda hard on making sure that their brands are protected in that sense, and that the influencers and creators they use are making sure that they're compliant with the law and with the self-regulatory guidelines. So we are seeing, definitely a push from the brands, because ultimately, the self-regulatory system at least kind of holds the brands responsible prima facie. So, if we don't see a disclosure, then we kind of write to the brands, and they are put on notice to respond to any violation. And therefore, we've seen over the years that they've kind of started taking things seriously. They have started including some of this in their contracts with the agencies that are kind of getting the influencers for them. So we definitely see a lot of formalization of the responsibility and where it lies, and and also I think the internal systems therefore to make sure that that is kind of like I said, I mean, the responsibility is well defined. Is that the practice across the board? I would say not yet. I would say it is still the larger kind of organizations that have reached that level of maturity. Many of the influencers, it's still a little nebulous as to whether they, when they do it, is it sometimes on the instruction of the brand, sometimes because they feel that the algorithms don't work in their favor the moment they have, a disclosure. So I think particularly with smaller influencers and smaller brands, sometimes there can be that, almost that understanding that, let's not go ahead with disclosures. Directionally, yes, it's getting more compliant, but like I said, we have many more hurdles to cross.
And what about you, Mohammed?
About disclosure, what we've noticed is that disclosure used to be a problem maybe 4 years ago. Some advertisers were thinking at this time that if you disclose your partnership, the content won't appear authentic, and same for the creator. And it has completely changed. We see that today because we had this law in 2023. We had many scandals because of scams or non-disclosure, and the fact today that there is a shared responsibility between the creator and the advertiser by the law has, I think that every stakeholder now is completely aware about the need to disclose, and we notice that with the observatory, disclosure is not a problem anymore. And even now today we see we belong to some jury, influence marketing jury, to give a prize to campaigns. And what we've noticed is that the disclosure, even with this jury, we belong to a specific jury called Stratégie de Grand Prix de l'Influence. Year after year, we notice that the disclosure is not a problem anymore. Even influencers have this reflex to disclose their partnership, and that they are not afraid of not being perceived as authentic. And also the audiences, the public, is now really aware about this necessity. So there is a kind of organic regulation. What's happening with the audience? So the audience are really aware of that. And if a content creator won't declare his partnership, they will point out the fact that he's not transparent.
And now I'll turn to you, Otto. How are the brands approaching disclosure and ethical marketing? Are they developing their own guidelines, relying more on your programs?
They're relying on the codes, and the codes are a result of their discussions among themselves. So I think there's a broad understood responsibility from big brands to join forces in this, and well understood in this country and most European markets, that they have to, protect their license to operate. If they don't organize it, they don't get it right, governments might step in and bring tighter rules. So that I don't see as a big challenge. What I do see as a big challenge, and what's happening, is that with the coming of AI in the influencer world, and with the abundance of messaging going around, it's just becoming impossible to track everything. And we've seen Chinese and Thai factories where tons of people are putting out messages on a constant basis. It's working around the clock. People are selling straight out of the video. All kinds of things that are basically boundaryless. There's no boundaries anymore. You can just go about, do things in the industrial level of messaging, and we have to cope with that. There's a lot of misleading stuff coming out. There's a lot of trolls. There's a lot of political messaging, and it all intertwines with commercial messaging as well. So it's a pretty big anarchy basically on the internet, and we have to make some, as we say, we have to make chocolate of it. We have to make it work and come to grasp with it. So that is big. That is big.
What do you see as the biggest risk to the credibility of influencer marketing going forward, say within this next year? I know you mentioned a bunch of different risks, but what would you say?
Well,
is the biggest risk?
basically, the two biggest risks here perceived are health issues. So whether there's people selling the wrong drugs or drop shipping drugs from outside the EU in a way which is very bad, and we can't do anything about it. And the other thing is basically financial products. People just losing loads of money on direct selling in the online sphere. So those are the two things our government is very worried about. They're looking at us. Can you help us? Can you change this? Can you make people aware that they shouldn't step into stuff? But those are the two big sectors that I think need a lot of attention.
Oh, I think health is a real issue. We have more and more content creators that declare themselves as specialized in specific topics, health topics, and they promote auto medication. They promote things that are completely against the medical protocol. So that's a real issue, because you're talking about health, and yes, financial product also, because some people have lost indeed also here, even if it's a really strictly regulated sector. We have scams on crypto and copy trading, operated from abroad, from Dubai and other countries, but targeting the French audiences. AI also, content generated by AI can also be perceived as a risk, because, as I said before, it's become harder and harder to separate a real person than an avatar, AI avatar that can recommend product, services, even if they have not tried it, of course, and can be harmful services or products. It's very hard to tackle these practices, because most of the case they're advertised in a public way, but the real issue is more in private channels that, for example, Telegram and they promote training sessions and forbidden products through their private channel that we cannot monitor. So it's a real challenge for us, technical challenge for us to monitor that. But I think that we have the same issue that in Netherlands, and I think other countries in Europe also.
I kind of completely agree with the other panelists. It's really around health and around finance. These are the big kind of categories that are very active in the influencer space. So you do have a lot of people who are, who are content creators in health and finance, and many of them don't have the qualifications, and even if sometimes they may be well-meaning, but they're speaking through their own experience and not really as professionals or as trained people. So we introduced some additional requirements for them. For example, for them to disclose what their qualifications were when they were giving finance or health advice. But I think, again, exactly the same issues. On social media, it's still out in the open and it can be monitored. But what's happening across, private channels, Telegram, all of that is really under the iceberg, and it's not really visible outside, and those are also very big concerns. And I think, again, it comes down to governments, technology, platforms, self-regulators, really, I think, sitting together and trying to figure out how we try and approach some of these things, because they are not that simple. And cross-border issues. So, for example, gambling is banned in India, but we have so many influencers, who are broadcasting from outside the country, but addressing audiences in India. So I think that, there certainly are a lot of complications, to these issues. And like I said, I think we all need to, sit together and think through how we can, with the different kinds of expertise that different organizations have, how do we come together to tackle some of these issues?
And learning from each other, right? I think that's one of the biggest is what we're doing right now, learning from each other. And so now let's shift to advice mode. For countries considering launching their own influencer training or monitoring schemes, what advice would you offer? And I think most importantly, I'd love to hear the advice you would offer, but who needs to be at the table for day one? Because I think I've heard a lot of you say that, from the beginning, maybe a certain brand or partner was at the table from day one. So I'd love to hear that. So what advice would you offer, and who needs to be at the table? And let's start with you, Mohammed.
We have not talked about the platform, talked about them, but I think that there are real partners in this program in terms of education and amplifying the education, because they have the strength to amplifying these programs. We are conducting several campaigns with them, advertising campaigns actually, about the role of the certification and what does it bring to the content creators, and why it is important. And by with content influencer, we onboard an influencer that is a porte-voix, that gives the voice, that because they influence each other. So it's important to onboard influencers for that in the campaigns. So platform can help us for that, and they help us to reach the content creators. Of course, the brands are the key stakeholder for that, because it all comes from the brand. And if the brand make it mandatory and give the impulse to the certification, it must work actually. Getting the public authorities also onboarded also to getting their support is also, of course, key for the success. And of course, the content creators, we cannot set up education tools towards the content creators without them. So we need to have them around the table.
Yeah, I think Mohammed has named all the important stakeholders. All of them definitely, need to be on the table early on. Of course, in most countries, creators are not very well organized, so it's sometimes difficult to find a way to get them in. But maybe some big names or some key categories, etc. It would be great to kind of get them in. I think the other learning that we had, and I would offer as advice, is how do you create the program itself? And I think when we started as well, we had a very SRO forward view of this is what you should know, and if you don't disclose this way, you ought to be, etc. I think we shouldn't be afraid to almost let creators create their own version of what this could look like. And I think as and when we do a version 2, I think we would definitely go down that path, because They speak in a language that is, a little different from how we would speak. And, so to me, those become things that are interesting. And possibly, I would say the third thing could be to look at the training in a slightly larger ecosystem of training. For example, I think Otto mentioned this earlier. They're really interested in how they build brands, how they build their own brand, how they work with, businesses, etc. So, is there a more holistic training under which, the SRO kind of training can rest, and that might make them a little bit more open, and those trainings also become a little bit more aspirational in some way. So, I would say that, in hindsight, we would kind of do all of that. So when we do, try and do our version 2, I think these are some areas that we would look at. And I think be ready to, refresh the program also, reasonably, maybe once every, I don't know, ideally 18 months or 24 months. So, what are you adding to that program? So how do you have a pipeline of, version 1 and 2 and 3, etc.? So I would say those are some things to keep in mind, that it's not a one-time, kind of put the program out. I think, again, as both Otto and Mohammed have said, the whole monitoring around it. So it's really a large, initiative. It's not just a certification program.
Yes, I agree. What I always say here is that it's not that the rules are necessarily going to change, as you said, every 18 or 24 months, but the type of content changes, right? And then how the rules apply to that is what needs to be explained to creators and constantly updated, because there's continually new content that is, put before us. And then the question becomes, well, how do the rules apply to this? So yes, I agree. And Otto, what about you? For countries considering launching their own influencer training or monitoring schemes, what advice would you offer?
Like I would really go back to what problem are you solving, and that differs per country. Because if you look at the pressure of government clapping down on certain ways or wanting to make new laws, it really differs from geography to geography. I think here in Europe, we are good regulators. So we're well aware that regulation is an answer that we often get from Brussels, but also from local governments. I don't know how that is in the US or in other parts of the world, whether that is the frightful issue. No, you're kind of in danger of getting all these ultra strict laws, or can we organize ourselves? And that pressure actually gives you a reason to join forces with advertisers or with influencers and get the around the table. So my insight would be, you really have to define your problem before you start talking about the answer. And then you can follow up with this. Who do we need first at the table to talk about this? And I think the advertising community is very aware that trust is the big issue. They want to talk about trust and trust issues in these new media. And then from there on, you can get the platforms involved. You can get the influencer community involved. If there's any organized influencer group, I would definitely reach out to them and see whether you can talk about this. And not in a way that you are policing right away. This is not about policing. This is about having to work together to establish trust. That's the one thing that you need to get right first and foremost.
Agreed. So let's talk about global alignment. We're talking about all these different issues we're facing, and they're incredibly similar as we continue, to discuss what keeps coming up in our different perspectives. So what opportunities do you see for greater global alignment or information sharing going forward?
Yeah, definitely. There is a real opportunity to exchange more information and learn from each other. As Otto was saying, challenges can really differ, but a challenge in one country can also then later appear in another, and vice versa. So that's really important. Also, as tools and platforms evolve, there could be an exchange on better information, how to adapt these tools. exchange of training modules. We see that also happening with SROs supporting each other. Some have more, some have less capacity to develop their own trainings. But for example, the Spanish SRO has developed a certification and training module and offered these videos to the Latin American members, which speak the same language. So this is a really great way to create more alignment and support each other. Then learning from the monitoring is really useful. What methodologies have members used? What tools are they using? So there we've seen over many years the exchange of AI tools, APIs. It's been really great to see, and this has helped even big SROs to really develop their programs quicker than they would have otherwise done. And I think what also really helps is to exchange data, information, case studies to see what the issues are across the globe. When we see sometimes what's happening with brands working with maybe the wrong influencer for their brand, what a kind of a backlash this can have, and this can really reverberate across the globe and really cause a brand to, lose customers. Then we really see there is a real need to work together, to work across the globe, and to help everyone do a better job in the online environment.
I completely agree with Sibyl. We need to work more closely at the international level under the ICAS initiatives and also the ASCI at the European level. We're exchanging, for example, on the education program, the way that we're building the course, what tools are we using, what platforms, how can we onboard all the stakeholders, but also for the monitoring and technologies and AI, the AI enhanced monitoring systems. What technology are we using, and how can we improve the accuracy rate? For example, with our data scientists, we worked with Otto and at the SRC and the UK in that perspective, but also with other countries, Spain and Germany and so on. So we need to work more closely, exchanging our methods, exchanging our tools to bring the proof to the authorities and also European authorities, European Commission, that self-regulation can be is agile and also works on modernized systems to an efficient monitoring. So working together more closely, of course.
Yeah, I think, this is purely case in point. I think what we've been doing with EASA is having a digital-driven working group, a digital-driven SR working group. So self-regulatory ideas are brought in, and different countries look at different ways of enhancing them. We especially are involved in a project where we look at smaller markets, smaller SROs that don't have the funds, but especially they don't have the people to venture into all this new technology and getting these initiatives off the ground. How can we find ways to make it easier for them? So in our monitoring tools, for instance, we look at ways of making it really foolproof, really easy to use for somebody who's not daily doing that running of monitoring jobs. Yeah, and we hope to learn from your markets. We hope to learn that there's different ways of looking at things than just the Dutch way. So there's good reason to really invest in ICAS and EASA as being partners that you can work with. Yeah.
And what about you, Manisha, from your perspective? What opportunities do you see for greater global alignment or information sharing?
Yeah, I think ASCI has certainly been one of the beneficiaries of, all the information that's been flowing around on influencers. We were able to learn, I think, so much from Mohammed and his team. And, we were in constant conversation with them. We were able to do their programs, before we were developing ours. And I think it's just that's, they're also each of the markets, because they have a slightly different jurisdictional flavor and, slightly different challenges in terms of how well rulemaking and rule following is established. There are also a lot of different ideas on the table that could actually be used in either the same or a slightly different way in your own market. So I think ideation, for me, I think is really the greatest, advantage that we have as a collective. And also the feeling that sometimes when we have the challenges that we are not alone, and there are others who have faced these challenges maybe in the past, or they will face this in the future, and that we have others to discuss our challenges with, to brainstorm and look at solutions. So I think just beyond the knowledge sharing, there's also how do we take things ahead, collectively learn from each other. And so I think it's really a great system in that sense, to be able to not having to invent the wheel for each market all the time. I also feel that with digital, increasingly our challenges are also converging. Perhaps there was a time maybe 15, 20 years ago where each market had very unique challenges. And I think we are seeing a lot of similarities now in challenges with digital. So, that kind of helps us also bring everything together. So, so it's been fantastic, I would say.
Yes. And I think for greater global alignment also makes for more self-regulatory power. So if there is a desire to have the platforms align with self-regulatory organizations on a certain topic or measure of reform, you're going to have a greater chance of getting that to happen if you have greater global alignment amongst, this SROs worldwide. So I think is a lot of opportunity there for greater global alignment and continued progress to push forward, the importance of education of creators and influencers and responsible influencer marketing. Thank you to our esteemed panelists for joining us today. I really appreciated your perspectives on what effective influencer education looks like, how to effectively develop it, the key stakeholders that are necessary to ensure success of such programs. And I think the most important takeaway is that global cooperation can really help shape the future of responsible influencer marketing. Thank you.